Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. Now, as part of this particular series on the walk up in the Tower of God, I did explain that 71 to 80 was a very important episode. I actually had to change days for recording, so this year may have me miss some of the important things, but it relates up so well. I did know that it had something to do with all the interlinking plots, so I hope that I do my best to get it right this time. I actually had a power outage in the middle of the last recording and it messed up the recording big time, so I'm hoping that this one goes a lot better. So we'll kick off with episode 71. Episode 71, everybody is gathered around Miseng and they're being quite harsh on Prince for the words he used to actually bring her down. We then see that Vadi shows up and she explains that Miseng took the flower by force, and when she used it, it caused her to go berserk. We then also see that Huryang is at the door because we see the wing from his devil showing at the entrance, and we see that a lot of them notice that these things are going on. Now you have to understand that there's a lot actually featuring in the background of this entire story. We then see the next few matches are actually announced. It's actually a typo as far as I know in the comic, because it was supposed to be Chang Bolrad. I'm suspecting Ilma Banaman or Huryang, Po Ten, Goa Seng Yu, Jin Droni, Polystar, Cookie, and Sheely, right? And obviously the other one was Iwa, Quattro Blitz, and whoever else was in there. So yeah, I'm not even going to mention the rest on the other field. They're not even going to be a match for them. And we see that Goaseng was worried about Chang. Then we see everybody is telling them to go out there and try their best. Good luck. And we see that Yua was worried about the crazy fire user. Then we see that IO announces the start of it, and multiple matches are happening all at once. Unlike for the first match where it was just one, it's similar to the whole situation. And we also have one other thing. The fight with Varagrav is actually going to occur on one of these fields as well. It's one of the crazy things. And remember, that's top 5 E rank regulars. That's Varagrav, Ender Rossi, Anak, Ran, and Cheng. And amongst those 5, the person who most probably could trump all of them is Jovial Grace Palm. And we'll find out more about that when it finally comes in. We then see that the gamblers have to put their bets on the matches all at once before they commence, and once they have done, the match commence outside. We see Goaseng enter into a match where the violence is absolutely extreme and somebody is coming straight at her to knock her, and immediately Huryang shows up and saves her. And Goaseng is all the way down to the point where she can almost cry. And we see that Cheng is watching them and he basically says love on the battlefield and he's teasing at them. One of the other things to note, because Huryang has a living ignition weapon, the level of his power may be extremely dangerous. Top 5 E rank regulars guaranteed for his power when he is fully ignited, but the problem is that it also has negative side effects when they ignite. And we even see Cheng refer to the fact that they aren't the main players. We then see Quattro and Iwa's match where Quattro just burns everybody, and Quattro is wondering why Iwa is still there, and she explains that she's a flame user and that he shouldn't be so careless with his fire and just burn everybody. At which point Quattro laughs, a flame user afraid of their own flames, and he basically says that nobody's ever going to listen to you if you're afraid of yourself. So he goes on and he looks and he thinks that there's a bigger match in Group 6. That is actually where Baragrav is, and he is called the top E rank regular, the Mad Dog of Yama. Now, for all of us who have read the story, Yama is one of the slayers of Fug. And we see that Baragrav walks out onto the field, and we see the others from the top 5 E rank regulars basically saying who decided that he is the strongest. And they're all looking at him and watching as he goes, and somebody decides to challenge him, at which point he just walks away from them and they attack him. And his strongest power is an invisible assault that simply attacks anybody who attacks him, so it's a counter-offensive measure. And with a strong defense and a counter-offensive measure that powerful, he would be just about unstoppable to really make him top 5 E-rank regular worthy. Now, had he not been able to get a hold of the Blood Tamara, he most likely would have been a very easy fight for someone like Bam to take down. Bam most probably would wipe him out like any one of the other regulars in the tower. However, with Blood Tamara helping him at full power, he'd most probably have a tough time against Bam at this point. Bam would also have a very tough time beating him because his Shinsu attacks would be reduced big time. He doesn't have something like Black Hole Sphere or any other crazy assault. He does have Butterfly Piercing technique, which would shatter the defense from Blood Tamara. And yeah, that is just the basics behind it. We then see that Varagrav looks up at Viol, and he basically has a threatening look, and we see that Rafleo explained that he's most likely here to hunt the Slayer nominee. And that is also the result of genetic manipulation with blood mixing. So we see that all of that is explained, and we then see that episode 71 is over. So we'll get to episode 72. It starts off with Huts inside his cell. He manages to break free of his bindings, and he asks Emily to help him out of there because she got him into this mess, although he still doesn't trust anything from her, but it's his only choice. And she actually leads him to a tunnel under his bed, which he uses, and he keeps moving along. We then go back to the matches, and we see that the matches keep going and things start getting crazy. We see Ender Rossi wins her match. We see several members from other teams winning their match. We see Vadi and Vesper winning their match. We see Rak playing in a match and winning, and that was one of the more crazy notes of this entire thing. We also see that Dan is part of it, if I am correct, under the name Den. And yeah, that's how it goes. And we see that Bio notices that Red Hawk is actually Rak. And then we see that the next set of games are announced, and we see the person on the main lotting for that day in Group 19 is Jovial Grace. So it's time for him to go out and have a match. And we see everybody is watching as he rushes out onto the field, and we see that these guys from the regulars decide to act like they FUG members, and they block off the path so that no other regulars can go there, and they allow him to take one of the 3 slots that are made in the center. We see Chang says that those are fake believers. They're just pretending to worship him. They plan to take advantage of Viol by being nice to him. Rather than failing the test after fighting against him, it's better to help him pass the test first. So that's the exact words. And then they'll split up and fight themselves to see who gets the remaining 2 spots. And we see that Wagner says, nope, that wasn't a very smart plan. Viol doesn't like that. Viol doesn't enjoy fighting. But when there's a reason for him to fight, he gets very scary. And the fake FUG worshippers basically were beating on a regular, and he says he'll pass on his own. And he says that they shouldn't try to make him his god. Is not a convenient machine that they can make their wishes come through with. And at this point, they decide to attack him, and he simply wipes them out effortlessly. And we see that Cheng really didn't think through on Bam's personality. And we see that his attacks were really, really powerful. He sent regulars flying so far that they hit the railings on the upper levels, and that was absolutely through the top. We then see that Anak is watching over him, and so is Ender Rossi. And the one thing which should really catch you on this here is he may be defeating small fries and smashing them out of the ring like a bunch of small little baseballs, but the skill he's using is insane, which is something that you have to think about. And we see that to Anak, Viol looks exactly like Bam. And we see that it's actually drawing quite a bit from her out as well. And that is where episode 72 ends. Episode 73, we see that Ender Rossi is looking at the tablet in her hand and trying to see an image of Jovial Grace, and she realizes that they keep scrubbing it all. And she realizes there's a chance for her to meet him. She'll approach him during the cruise party, which all the regulars are obliged to be part of. We then see Shia is totally out of breath because she also had a match at the same time. And Viol is just walking up casually because when he uses Shinsu, he doesn't drain stamina. It really isn't that painful for him. It actually has no effect because of his gift of Shinsu. So yeah, we see that the last matches are about to be played, and that Casino, Yato are in one of the matches. We see that Novik is in another one of the matches, along with Ran being in one of the matches. And we see that Chiasha says that Bam should never ever say what he said again, that he won't make their wishes come true. And we see that Novik and Ran have come up with a very plausible possibility on what's going on. They realize that when Viol was fighting in the pre-workshop battle, that is the gun game, he actually hid his face from the team with Shibisu and Anak and the Rossi in it. So the princess's team, he hid his identity from. And Team 1 said they're here to take him back to their team. So there is something else which gets more crazy. And they're basically trying to put everything back together, and they're realizing that the Slayer nominee doesn't make enough explanation. Something more is going on in this whole situation. And then we see Beta pass the two of them, and we see Ran says that the person who passed him is not a human. We then see that Bam is sitting in a room and is basically contemplating things. We then see that the matches continue, and Novik wins his match, Yato wins. We see that everything is going the way that it should be going. And we see Bam starts walking off when he notices somebody is in his changing room, and this is Beta. We then see that it's finally time for the last game of the individual tournaments, and the winners from a total of 26 groups who will fight in the final tickets to the team tournament. And we see that Ran is the last one from the team to go for it, and they basically explain that only 6 gamblers are going through from this entire thing. So 6 gamblers and 26 by 3, that makes quite a lot of members for them to choose from. It's going to be a huge entry pool for that final match, and obviously each team is made up of a certain number of individuals. That's all going to add to the entire craziness in the end. And we see the last group has Anak, Jahad and Kunran in the same match, and they really want to go at each other because the last time they fought they didn't get to finish it off. And basically everybody is like, it's time to find out who's stronger. And we see that they add in a special rule. If they bet all in on the winner, they can win an additional 3 million points, and that is where this episode ends. So episode 73 ends on that, and 74 is going to be this match. So everybody in the room for gamblers basically already knows that Khun Ran and Anak already had a fight, and they know their natures basically, and the fact that they won't let the fight go. So even though they're in the same match, and the smart move would be for them both to qualify, they're more than likely gonna go at it. And all the gamblers have to figure out which one of the two will win. So they go all in on one or the other. In one of the other matches, one of the secret little regulars who's going to show up is Paracule, and he has a big part to play in messing things up. And we see that everybody is getting ready and everybody is on their fields. And we see that the match where Paracule is in, everybody just goes crazy and they start whacking and killing each other from the get-go. In the match where Anak and Ran is, all the regulars are glued to the sides. They don't want to get caught in the crossfire because they know it's coming when those two collide. We then see Balrog explaining that if it was just a battle of head-to-head strength, Anak would win, hands down. There isn't a problem on that part. But if it came down to a match where there are multiple variables and there's rules for them to play with, and in that case, Ran most definitely had the upper hand, and things are gonna go his way provided they fight within the regulations of the room. So Ran basically confronts Ayo and he says, can you make a special rule so that just the two of them can fight, so that the other regulars don't have an interruption from them and they aren't allowed to interrupt their fight, and in turn they get to choose whichever is the remaining slot after the two of them fight. And basically you'd figure out that all the gamblers have already betted either on me and her, so it makes no difference. You aren't illegally changing the way the game is going to go. And the regulars all start yammering about it, and then we see that Ayo gets a call from the other judge, and they basically say, okay, fine, they'll allow it to go and they can have their fight. And we see that Balrog thinks, why in the world did he throw away the rules which were going to benefit him? Khun Ran basically just made this year harder for him to win. He is now at Anak's advantage. And then we see the moment that the match starts with them. Ran swallows something and he's chewing on it, and basically as it's going down, Anak attacks immediately and she hits him while he's swallowing, and he finally swallows it and he says, that was very annoying, you shouldn't have hit him while he was eating. And then we see that he has a trace on his face. Now, for all of you who haven't read the story, trace is basically a form of Shinsu boost that you get by ingesting a special type of Shinsu. And for Ran, this is the lightning pearl. And we see that he is all of a sudden way more powerful and way more fast, and he's absolutely stronger in this moment. He has more power than she has at that point. We then see that Beta speaks to Bam, and he explains that he's also a living ignition weapon. That's where episode 74 ends, and we'll get into episode 75. We see that the Archon workshop, the Archon, I think Archon would work better. Archon Workshop is searching for Beta because he got out, and he isn't a very stable individual. His particular living ignition weapon isn't a stable one, so he isn't that lucky. Then we see that Casino receives the message that Beta got out, and we see Ran and Anak's fight is getting more heated. Not only are they fighting each other, but they're also allowing their fight to hit over to other matches and other places in the arena. And we just see how crazy they are. And we see that Anak decides to fight Ran in close quarters, and we see that Ran outdoes her, and he smashes her away and he blasts her apart with all of her strong range, and basically she starts getting really insulted. So Ran explains exactly what he did, and he says that this is a secret weapon of his family and that it made him a lot stronger, and that he can only do it for about 5 minutes. And basically Anak says, so you showed me your weakness, and he says, you don't understand what I'm telling you. I'm telling you that in 5 minutes you're gonna be beat, basically. And that really ticks off Anak because she's been provoked in the place where she believed she was superior. And instead of being smart, she ends up rushing in to his strong point, which ends up getting her beaten down real heavy. And he already understood her weakness, it was her pride, and he keeps smashing her around with lightning techniques. And we see that instead of running away, Anak started to try and beat him at his strongest, which ends up really beating her down because he basically formed a small scratch, and when he exposed what he was doing, he caused it to spread like crazy and made it a big gash in her pride. Then we see he goes for a Marshni style lightning spear technique, and he hits her with the Sword of Light, which ends up piercing right through her, just close to her heart, without killing her. And basically it's Kunran's win if you're looking at it that way. However, that is where episode 75 ends. Episode 76 starts off with Beta talking to Viol, and they're basically explaining the whole situation that Viol is a completed living ignition weapon, and that he doesn't know how to make his devil come out yet, but if he thinks carefully, he'll figure out why Pug brought him here, and that the prize they want to keep forever and Asuka. And basically he says about the sin that was done to give power to Balm, and basically he just walks off. He just rattles Balm up before he leaves. We then see that Ran is dropping down as he's finally basically knocked Anak almost down, and she is knocked down in the middle of the ring. And we see Anak wake up even though she should be done, and she basically says this isn't over, and she goes at him. She says she'll kill him in that time element that he had. And we find out that one of her strongest powers is her willpower, and because he pushed her to this limit, she now is even stronger than she was a few minutes ago. And although he barely missed her heart, he definitely hurt her very dangerously near one of her vital points, so she also is running on a limited amount of time. And we see the two go at it again, and they're fighting like crazy. And we see the two of them are in the water, and they're about to go at it again for another round of conflict. All Ran has to do is keep using long range assaults and he'll win. And eventually he gets the edge where he finally throws her to a far enough edge, and he's thinking about it, and he's ready to do the long assault. And we see that Kun basically explains everything, or Aguero Agnes, and he's saying that she barely has enough power to keep standing. She can't fight in close combat thanks to she can fight in close combat thanks to her instinct, but she can't block long distance assaults. If Ran chooses to keep long distance, he'll win, and the winner will instantly be Ran. And instead of being reasonable, he ends up jumping in and fighting her in close quarters, at which point Kun and Balrog basically say they basically threw it all out the window, and now they are in a big problem because the match could be anybody's. The two exchange a blow, and everybody's hopes of figuring out who won end up going down the drain when Parachul does his little evolution and pulls himself out of the water to save his life. He ends up tossing both of them into the water, which knocks the two of them both out. And that basically ruins the match at that point. We then see Baum using Emily, and he asks a question which we can't read properly. And we see that Emily says the loving ignition weapon, Jovial Grace, is the prize from the battle. And that is something really scary. That's where episode 76 ends, and 77 starts with Traveler. Traveler is screaming in his cell saying he has to save Emily soon, and then we see that there's other travelers, and as they start saying it, everybody else, every other traveler who's in there realizes they did the exact same thing for Emily, that she's basically been playing multiple individuals all at once. We then see Hats dropping down all the way to the bottom of that passage that he went through, and he sees that there's a door there. And as he is approaching it, we see that he's attacked by a patrol, a level 60 patrol, the Guga Crab. And basically it starts assaulting him, and he grabs a piece of pipe as his weapon to fight with because just fighting without a weapon is too difficult for him, and he thinks that the pipe is really weak and there's not much he can do about it. It's hollow in the center, and if he can fill the hollowness with Shinsu of a very high density, he might be able to make this a very powerful weapon. And that's exactly what he does. He ends up using it to fight, and he finally learns a new skill in using his Shinsu to actually generate his weapon's main qualities, and he attacks the crab, at which point he manages to use his demonic fish wheel dance, and he assaults the crab, stabbing it in the eye, and then it decides to self-destruct. And we see Liroro enter in and save his life with a Dagon style assault, which stops the explosion. And we see Liroro introduce himself at this point. Now you have to understand, Liroro is here for Willa Yuksong, so he's here for a particular reason. They're here to look after Viol, and they want to know what's going on. So that is where 77 ends, and we get into 78. Now there's a lot to explain at this point because so much has been revealed, but I'm still going to continue till the end before it all goes out. We see Liroro talking to Hats, and he explains that the workshop battles are already over. He doesn't have a way to get back to the test, and instead he can help Liroro with his current job and help him get a job at the moment. So basically that's how it goes. And he says they need to stop the workshop from making the worst weapon ever. And we see that Madarako and the regulars from Fug are watching the party that's going on, and they're all enjoying themselves. They're getting ready for what they're going to do next, and basically they're saying they're going to get their hands on Jovial Grace. Now we need to understand that there's more going on. We then see Wagnan is super sad because the gambler on their team Kun failed because of the way the match ended, and we see that they really depressed. They lost a lot. We then see Ender Rossi walking in, and basically everybody is clamoring around the fact that she's so beautiful. Even Wagner and Akrapta are looking at her, and there's a lot to actually be spoken of. Then we see that Kun Ran is here at the party, and he can actually move around, and he actually says that it takes him some time to move around after he's used the Lightning Pearl. And we see that they express some things between each other. It's not any type of craziness, but anyway, we see Ran say that the next time they fight that he'll win for sure. And after that, we see Ran ask her, "Do you know Viol?" And Ran expresses that it seems like Viol knows their team. And at this point, we see Shia is with Novik and Huriang. And we see that Huriang is kidnapped by Miseng and Prince, who take him over to Goaseng, because him and Goaseng have quite the bond with each other. And they actually organize for the two of them to spend time with each other. We then see that the other regulars are all also having fun. We see how Huriang and Goaseng have fun with each other, and the way they danced, and all of the fun they had with each other. And they basically talk about everything, and that they met Miss Sophie, and that the experiments hadn't stopped, and it's still going on, and that she knew everything that was going to happen from the start. Even giving them their names were part of the whole experiment. It was to ensure that they managed to cope with the power they had inside. We then see that Rak is basically murdering Parakul for his interference, and we see Yua tells him to stop. And we see Rak decides to take things into his own hands and break the rules and just get Bam on his own. We then see that Ender Rossi managed to disguise herself after entering with the big fleshy entrance, and we see that all the gamblers had gathered because they had to work out something else around the whole situation of the tournament. We see that that is the end of 78, and we'll get into it in 79. We see that just about all of the gamblers except for two had passed, and that was Refleo and Ron Bai from Varagrav's team. So yeah, basically it was only two gamblers out of the 6 required, and they basically have this big chat with the hosts and the fact that there was illegal intervention in that match, and they haven't yet failed yet, and that they should be given a chance. And they explain that they're going to host what's called the growth tournament the next day for the gamblers, so that they can figure out who passes from them. We then see that Ender Rossi goes looking for Viol, and she starts running around the stadium, and she's using Emily to track him down. And we see that he disappeared and he vanished into another area. We then see that the guards are looking for Beta quite heavily, and that Beta is actually looking to talk to Bam, and we see that Beta and Bam have a conversation at this point, and they talk about the ignition weapon inside him. And they explain that the needle inside him is a replica, and that the real one is here. It's in the stadium where they're going to fight. And if he goes into the stadium and he steals it, then he'll basically just subvert this entire tournament. We then see that Kun explains the situation to his team, and he explains that they're going to have the gamblers select a single starter from the lower priced individuals. Then they're going to have to win by knocking each other out and getting more team members on the ground, and that is how they're going to start building up higher and higher numbers. And then they explain that Team Fug and Team Mad Dog are going to go at each other first. So they're going to have a little match ahead of it, and whoever wins the growth tournament will face them off in the final. Then we see Rak and Iwa come to the point where Viol is, and they decide to sneak into Viol's accommodation. And we see that Enderossi is also there, and she bumps into Rak, and she's like, crocodile, right? And we then see that Viol walks in on them when he's looking for Shia Shia. And that ends episode 77. And we see Kun hoping that Crocodile doesn't do anything crazy or stupid. And we see that the whole fight continues on. And Rossi says Jovial Grace and tries to catch him, in which point he uses reverse flow control and starts running away from them. And we see him ask why are they there, and the reason why he's out of breath isn't because this is hard for him. It's actually because his heart is trembling at that point. And then we see he has to get out of there, and as he's trying to run, Iwa tries to catch him, and he also evades her quite easily. And as he's about to hit the stairs to go up to another level, he sees Paracule say revolution freedom, and that gives Rak a chance to pin him down. And Rak looks into his eyes and he says, you were alive, you're alive. And we see that Rak is basically crying, and he hugs him, and we see, that heartfelt situation. And we see Enderossi also feels it at that point, and everybody has this drawn out emotion. We see Huriang and Goa Singh is saying their goodbyes, and the fact that they don't want to leave. And we see that they're slowly greeting each other, and that they enjoy themselves that night. And that after the tournament, Huriang intends to go back to the team with them, and that they saved his life basically. And we see that that Rak is on top of Viol, and he's saying, Black Turtle, you're alive. And he says he won't forgive those who made him like this and did this to him. And we see that Viol says they should leave, and he basically says there's no way he will. And Rossi grabs him and takes him by force. And Rossi says, you better come back, if not you'll miss our date, which is the promise they made back in season 1 during the last exam. We then see the Bong Bong transports her away, which is the reward that she got from her match. At which point we see Rafleo asks what happened with Balm, and we see that Enderossi asks Rak what is going on, what was he hiding. And we see Viol say thank you to Novik, and that's because he got Shia totally drunk and got Rafleo to go out so that his teammates wouldn't get caught. And we see that he says fight with me tomorrow in the tournament. And we see Rafleo and the rest of them actually had planned that if Viol should break the rules, they can change the way things are. And they said that they're gonna kill all of Viol's teammates in the next match. So they basically plan to go a little bit crazy. And we see Liroro arrives at Beta, and Beta uses one of his ignitions to get away from Liroro, at which point we see him get away and he's off on his own path. They can't really track him any further. We then see the tournament starting, and we see Io introducing everything, and he explains that the growth tournament will happen on one side of the island, while the finale between Fug and Team Varagrav happens on the other side. And that is where episode 80 ends. Now, as I said, there's a lot to go over. So we actually had to go and decrypt everything. Now, the way that Viol had been fighting, the fact that he'd been going easy on individuals, are things that we have to understand. We have to understand that things are very, very complicated. They put Viol in a situation where his emotions are all over the place. The fact that he's an irregular is at risk of being exposed with all of this, and there's so much more going on in the grand scheme of things with this whole arc going on here. We see that Willa Yuksong is still protecting him as well, so he has even more protection than we originally thought. So even Fag doesn't know how dangerous the situation is. Fag wouldn't take Willa Yuksong on because Willa Yuksong would crush Jahad's army if they went up against them. So you can understand how crazy powerful they are. So they're facing Willa Yuksong in this whole situation, and they don't know it. Willa Yuksong is only playing it in small pieces at this point. They're not all out in the entire situation, which is what's making this year quite easy for Fag to do whatever they wanted to do. And they basically are just to make sure that Bam doesn't get hurt. So the moment the threat level gets too high, they'll just swoop in and take Bam out of the situation. So yeah, that was the whole thing that was going on in this whole situation from that one point. Then we have the whole point of Bam himself. Bam has to ensure that he beats his teammates in order to keep them alive. He also knows that Kun is still alive because he kept Kun alive himself, and he also knows that Rak is there and there's so many people looking for him, and he can't say anything or be with them or express anything. If he does, he'll get them killed, and he has to control his emotions in a way that is just not normal, and there's so much stacked against him at this point for him to actually make that mistake. So it's basically that everything was set up for this particular point. This is actually Slayer Karaka and several of the others. They intended to take Bam and melt him into an ignition weapon that they could use to kill 10 great family members, because a Slayer who isn't loyal to Fag is quite dangerous, and considering what they didn't expect him to be loyal at all to them, and that's how things are unfolding. So yeah, that is how things happened in the story, and those are some of the things that you have to understand at this point. Now, all of these secret plots played a very big part in the first part of the exam, because we needed to understand that Fag had planned to ensure that Bam ran into his friends, and they ensured that his identity would be revealed. That's why they made him attack Kun, basically with their whole narration. That was the whole setup they planned at Alan's hand. They intended to pull Kun into the whole mess and have him expose that Bam was alive, which would break the rules that was set up by Jin Sang Ha, which would allow them to break the rules further, and basically a whole lot of craziness at that point. So yeah, they definitely were trying to go well beyond the limits. So that is everything that you need to know about that particular point in the story. I hope that you all did enjoy, because there's a lot more to come, especially with the next 20 episodes, and the last 10 episodes following that there have some of the most important parts to this early part of the story, and we get to see a lot more about the personal relationships that still remain with Bam. So catch you all then, and have a good day.